Are you tugging on your hamstrings, hoping that one day they will finally loosen up, but only finding yourself with potentially more pain and maybe even low back pain? Let's talk about what's happening and how to fix it. A lot of people realize that they have tight hamstrings or the muscle in the back of your thigh, and they are struggling to figure out why after stretching it and stretching and stretching it, the motion in the hamstrings is not improving and the tension may actually be getting worse. And listen, I understand it's important to keep your hamstrings as flexible as you are capable of. However, when the tension is increasing, we're heading in the wrong direction. I'm Dr. Amy, PhD trained orthopedic manual physical therapist, and I believe that movement is life, and you deserve both. First off today, we're going to talk about why you should be stretching your hamstrings, as well as who should not be stretching their hamstrings. Then we're going to go through several different hamstring stretches so you can find the one that works best for you, as well as talking about the one that is commonly used on YouTube that I am going to ask you to avoid. And I'll explain more when we get there. All right, first off, why do you need to stretch your hamstrings? It is critically important to stretch these muscles because they attach to the pelvis. So if you put your hands on your hips, that is your pelvis, and your hamstrings actually attach to it, which means if they're tight, they're going to tilt the pelvis. If they tilt the pelvis backwards, it makes it harder to sit up properly or stand up properly, and makes it more difficult to literally do every single activity that you're trying to do. So the hamstrings run from the pelvis down the femur or the thigh bone and actually attach below the knee. So if you put your hands on each side of your knee, you'll feel like these ropey tendons in there. That's actually your hamstring tendons. So they travel a long distance and they can cause a lot of problems. Tight hamstrings can make it really difficult to walk correctly, to bend forward, and they can even make sitting really difficult because it can be hard to get in that proper position, which can lead to things like low back pain. However, stretching improperly can also lead to back pain because it irritates the low back, or worse yet, it can even cause sciatica. And I do want to say, if you're watching this video to learn how to stretch your hamstrings because you are suffering currently with sciatica pain, please do not do that. I do not recommend stretching the hamstrings when you are going through a sciatica flare because it will actually stretch the sciatic nerve as well. And what will happen is the nerve will become more irritated. Now, I know when you do the stretch, it will feel much better and you'll be like, oh, that really helped my sciatic nerve. But let me tell you, it will come back with a fierce vengeance. And that's not what we want for you. So if you are suffering with a current sciatica flare-up, please do not watch this video any further. Go watch one of our sciatica videos instead, where we discuss the importance of not stretching your hamstrings while you're having an active sciatica flare. And that would be the biggest reason I would say to not stretch your hamstrings, is because of the importance of not aggravating the sciatic nerve. So some people will feel like they have this tension down the back of their leg, but it's actually a nerve tension as opposed to a hamstring tension. So how do you know if this is you? Well, if you have sciatica, so you have that sharp stabbing, shooting pain going down the back of your leg, then yes, you have nerve issues, please don't do this stretch. However, if you do these stretches and after you do the recommended dosage, you actually feel like things are tighter, then chances are that you are actually having a nerve irritation and you have stretched that nerve and it does not like it. In that case, if you do not feel better after doing these stretches, and you believe that you have that nerve tension, then I would highly recommend putting this video to the side for about a month or so. Then you can come back and try it again because that nerve could be calmed down. But we do not want to be irritating the sciatic nerve. I mean, we don't want to be irritating any nerve. And what we know for sure is nerves do not like to be stretched. All right, our first hamstring stretch we can do in sitting. Now, this is a rolly stool, which is not the recommended one. It's just what I happen to have on hand here. I would recommend you do it in something more like a kitchen chair or something with a firmer base, but we're going to pretend like I have a nice firm base here in front of me. So what you're going to do is you're going to put one foot out, the other foot is going to be back here for support, and you're going to bring your heel down and your toes up towards your head. Then what you're going to do is you're going to hinge through your hip bones. Now, what I see a lot of people do is they'll try to bend through their back. This puts a lot of pressure on the low back, and this is not what we want to do. So if you need to put your hands on your hips, it can be really helpful to feel where you're moving through there. Whereas if you try to bend through your back, you're gonna be like, well, that doesn't feel like it's moving in the right spot. So I like to put my thumbs on my hips to make sure I'm in the right spot. You also can use this to make sure that your pelvis stays neutral. We don't want the pelvis to be rocking back and forth or anything like that, because we wanna make sure we're getting that pure hamstring stretch. So I like to put my hands on my hips so I can feel it, and then I'm going to hinge through my hips as if I'm trying to stick my booty out behind me. And my left hamstring is nice and tight today, so I can already feel that stretch really well right here. You're going to hold it for 10 seconds, and then you're just going to sit up and release it for 10 seconds minimum. Now, if you're sitting and you can just do the other side while you're resting, that's fine too. You can put the other leg out straight. Make sure our hips are nice and stacked. Our thumbs are on our hip bones to make sure we're getting that nice motion. Now this one, yep, you'd think I'd go a little bit farther on this side, but not really, not that much further. My hamstrings are nice and tight today. So you guys get to see what they look like. And I'm gonna hold that for 10 seconds. And then I'm gonna switch to the other side. Since I'm just sitting, I can just switch pretty easily from side to side. Now this is a great stretch to do because you could do it potentially even while you're sitting in your office chair. If you're sitting in an office chair, you do need to make sure you scoot towards the front. Okay, you can't be really deep into an office chair. It's just gonna be really hard to get that correct straight leg. It's also going to be difficult to make sure you're hinging through here. So you just need to be sitting more on the edge of the chair so you can bring that leg out straight, heel down, and then be able to move through those hips. You're gonna hold it for 10 seconds and you're gonna do 3 reps on each side. Now, if you're just starting stretching your hamstrings, or maybe you don't have a good chair that you can use to do the previous stretch, I'm gonna show you my favorite hamstring stretch, especially for people who are starting out. I recommend that you get a stretch strap. I'm gonna put a link below in the description box of this stretch strap because I think it's a really good one. However, you could also use a beach towel or a belt to do this stretch. This one just makes it a little bit easier. The reason why this is my favorite stretch is because your spine is in a super safe and protected position while you're doing the stretch. And it makes it really easy to keep that safe, supported position during the entire stretch. Now, I'm gonna do it on the floor. However, you can do it on your bed as long as you don't roll around on your bed when you're trying to do it. Some people have a really soft, squishy bed and then they bring that leg up and they kind of like tilt over to the side. Okay, that's not gonna work, but it's fine to do it on your bed as long as it's firm enough and you feel stable on it. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take our stretch strap, kind of find the middle of it. We're gonna put our foot in the strap. Okay, so once you're down with that strap over the foot, you're gonna put the other leg down straight. This is gonna help keep your pelvis in that nice neutral position. Then what you're gonna do is bring this up, and see, this is a nice thing about the stretch strap. It just holds everything in place. Then you can bend to bring that foot up to where you feel that comfortable stretch. Again, it's a hurt so good stretch. It's not a, oh, I can't breathe stretch. You're gonna hold that for 10 seconds. And then you're gonna bring it back down and let it rest for 10 seconds. Now, if I was using the stretch strap, I wouldn't then turn and go and do the other side just because it's kind of a pain. I would just hang out for 10 seconds and then I would get into the stretch again. However, if you would prefer to switch from side to side and use your rest to stretch the other side, that's absolutely fine too. You're gonna do a 10-second stretch and you're gonna do 3 on each side. So you probably know I'm going to talk about the doorway stretch. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, just go ahead and fast forward until you see the next stretch, because this is not a stretch that I want you to know about, nor do I want you to know how to do. However, It is all over YouTube as a way to stretch your hamstrings. And yes, technically, it will potentially stretch your hamstrings. However, a lot of people that I see when they come into the clinic and they show me the stretch, they're not doing it correctly because it is very difficult to do it correctly to get a good, comfortable stretch and maintain it. But it's very difficult to get in and out of. And so it puts a lot of weird torque through your pelvis and your spine in order to get in and out of that position, which is actually my biggest problem with the stretch. The stretch itself isn't necessarily that big of a problem, although a lot of people tend to overdo it, and I get concerned about that. It's more getting into the position, and there's so many other stretches that are just way easier to get into. So I don't feel like you need to do the doorway stretch, and if you feel like, oh, I've tried stretching my hamstrings using the doorway stretch and it doesn't work, I'm gonna recommend you try one of these other methods. Okay, so now I'm going to show you my favorite hamstring stretch. This is actually how I stretch my hamstrings on a daily basis. If you've watched my videos before, you've probably seen me do this stretch regularly throughout them because it's my favorite one. And it's what I ask everybody to do who comes into the clinic. So what you're going to do is you're going to find something to put your foot up on. I have a little bolster here, and that works just fine. If you're at home, you could put it on the first or second step. You can even use your car door jamb if you're like out hiking and you need to stretch your hamstrings or something like that. There's just something to kind of prop your foot up a little bit. A curb would work. Anything you have around, just pop your foot up a little bit. Then what you're going to do is you're going to put your hands on your hip bones. So these are your hip bones. A lot of people think up here is their hip bones. That's actually the ilium, that's your pelvis. I'm gonna have you put your hands here through your hip bones so you can actually feel that motion that's coming through there. Then keeping that leg straight, toes are gonna be back towards your head. You're going to stick your bottom back and bend, see, bending through the hip bones, sticking your bottom back until you feel that nice stretch down the hamstring. And honestly, I can even feel this one into the calf. You're going to hold that for 10 seconds. Then you're going to release that for 10 seconds. Now, since I'm standing, it's pretty easy. I'm going to go ahead and just switch sides while I'm doing my rest on that side. Make sure I've got my pelvis squared, my hips, my hands on my hips so I can make sure that I'm bending forward properly. And I'm going to stick my booty out and get that nice stretch down through my hamstrings. Now, as you can see, I don't have to move very far, and I am getting a nice stretch through my hamstrings. Everybody's different. So for some people, getting their foot up and then they put their hands on their hips, they just kind of go like that. That's enough of a hamstring stretch. And that's fine if that's you. And for some people, you know, you're going to be able to go way down further than I can. Just make sure that if you're doing that, you're not bending through your back. Okay. Because a lot of people will try to like do like this, you know, trying to reach, right? That ends up potentially causing some low back pain. So what you want to do instead, hands on your hips, stick your booty out. You can think about that while you're stretching. All right, so with all of those stretches, whichever one you choose, you want to hold for 10 seconds, rest for 10 seconds. You can do the other side if you choose to, and do that 3 times. So you want to do 3 sets of 10 seconds. Now, there are some common mistakes that I want to make sure that you avoid while you're stretching your hamstrings. The first one that I see a lot is that people either hyperextend their knee or really lock their knee out. And although we want a straight leg, we don't want it to be hyperextended. So if you are someone who's super flexible, you may need to have what feels like a slight bend in your knee to make sure it's not hyperextended. Another common mistake I see when stretching the hamstrings is that people will round their low back. Make sure that all of your motion is coming through your hip joints and not through your back. And a big one for all stretches, but I definitely see it most with a hamstring stretch, is that people will stretch so much that they have to hold their breath because they can't breathe while they're stretching. Please, friends, the stretch should be comfortable enough that you can breathe through it. In fact, often while I'm stretching, you may see that once I get into that comfortable position, I actually take a deep breath. With 10 seconds, you should have a chance to do a couple of deep breaths, which is what I'll usually do when I'm doing my own stretching routine. It's just a little bit harder to remember to do that when I'm on video, but I'll get a couple deep breaths in, and that's how I know it's time to switch sides. And the number one thing I want to make sure you avoid is stretching when you're cold. So you may be a morning workout person, like you roll out of bed and then you head to the gym or you head for your run or whatever your preferred activity is. And you feel like, well, I need to stretch before I do my activity. I'd recommend doing a light warm up first. So maybe it's a little 5 minutes on the treadmill, walking or jogging to get your muscles warmed up before you do any stretching. When you stretch cold muscles, that can lead to micro tears, which can compound over time. So I would definitely recommend not stretching cold and make sure you have a little bit of an active warm up before you stretch. However, in all honesty, I stretch after I exercise because those muscles are nice and warm, and it's going to be safer to get that really good stretch and not cause trauma or damage the muscle fibers. Now, you may be wondering, should I stretch before or after I foam roll? And friends, I'm going to ask you to not foam roll your hamstrings anymore. I know, it's another controversial statement, but you know what? Just try it for a month. If your hamstrings feel really tight and you've been foam rolling them and you're not seeing any improvement in their length, how about try stretching them for a month every single day without foam rolling, and then see where you are at the end of the month. Because every body is different, and maybe what your body needs is more stretching and less foam rolling. Because the truth is that stretching your hamstrings should help, not hurt. However, you do have to be consistent. So if you struggle with chronic hamstring tension, I'm going to ask you to do whichever stretch you felt was the best for your body today. I'm going to ask you to do that every single day. Try it for a month. And I believe that after a month, you will notice an increase in your hamstring length, which hopefully will motivate you to continue doing it for the rest of your life. Now, towards the beginning of the video, we talked a lot about sciatica and how you should not stretch your hamstrings if you have sciatica. If that resonated with you, I'm going to have you go check out this video over here. If you found benefit from this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe.